Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Oh, Miles here.
Your Owl Post for the week is freshly delivered, and I am just one of the hosts here, Matthew Rushing. And with me, as she is every single week, ready for fall, Andrea Coffman.
Hello! It's
Hey.
still 104 here.
Yeah, I figured you would probably
I'm ready
be
for fall.
Yeah.
It's just not fall yet.
No. I mean, and does Arizona really have a fall, or does it just get cooler?
We usually do. We usually don't have a big winter. We just have like a very long fall. Like it's a little chilly at the end. But yeah, we're usually like we've already been through our monsoon seasons and it's getting cooler and we've already been through all that by this point normally. But it's still one of the hottest days of the year happening. We can still swim. We can still do all that fun stuff. So it's been quite a year for sure. But
Nice.
yeah.
Well, it is exciting because we're continuing through the Deathly Hallows, and we're in Chapter 17, Bathilda's Secret. That is not a new lingerie store, folks. But before we get there...
It's the wizarding version. Somebody make that stat.
Yes.
I will buy your product.
I need to see somebody create that, like in artwork or whatever, as they're walking through Diagon Alley and it's Bathilda's Secret,
Yes, but I need the Victoria's Secret angels. Only it needs to be Bathilda's Secret witches.
Yes.
They need all have broomsticks instead of wings.
Yes. Oh, we could be I don't know why we're not making this right now. We could make a fortune.
It would be amazing.
Yeah. Harry Potter fans would eat this up. So if you like our idea, let us know. Hit us up on Twitter at Join Nerd Party. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/The Nerd Party. You can go over to thenerdparty.com where you can send Dre and I an email. And in fact, in the contact section, so it's thenerdparty.com/contact. I did want to mention we got a quick email, and hold on one second. Gotta find it. Justin had emailed us, and he was the one who wrote the review about him and his daughter listening to Owl Post for their nightly. They read and then they listen. And so I just wanted to thank you so much, Justin. We really appreciate you writing us and let us know who you were. And it's so beautiful. We love being here for you guys and having a lot of fun. And we appreciate that you feel like we deserve that 5-star. So thank you so much for writing and letting us know.
And I'm really jealous of your bedtime routine because mine usually consists of putting her down, standing outside her door and yelling, "Get back in bed!" And you can't pick a dress out of the closet tomorrow if you don't stay in bed. To which point I wake up and she's fully dressed in clothes and boots and a sweatshirt in the middle of the night. So I will take your bedtime routine of listening to Harry Potter and reading the stories any day over that madness. So I'm jealous.
Well, I don't know if either of us is going to be jealous of Harry and Hermione because as we get into this chapter, they have the feeling as they're kind of leaving the cemetery that they're being watched. And so they put the cloak back on. And Harry's... I like the way she puts it, like Harry is trying to make things feel less dangerous than he's actually feeling inside for Hermione, so they're not both freaking out at the same time, because this isn't they're feeling uncomfortable, like they're being watched. And so I liked this beginning because I just love how I feel like realistic Rowling is at allowing us to get an inner picture of what these characters are going through, and you realize they're still only 17 years old, and they're, Harry has the weight of the world on his shoulders.
Which we really see as we go start this chapter out, right? They think they're being watched. Harry kind of talks her down, and then they find the monument of his old home, and you realize... I think that moment was cute for me too, where we see all this magical graffiti, which I mean, who knew we had magical graffiti? There's totally room in this magical world for Bathilda's secret, guys. There's room for magical graffiti. There is room for a lingerie line and women's clothing apparel called Bathilda's Secret. But, you know, Hermione has a very Hermione approach, and it's very, you know, teenager. And it's like, they shouldn't have done that. And the fact that, you know, I love that Harry's like, no, I think it's brilliant. Like, I love that they did that. It reminds you kind of how old they are, right? And what really speaks to them, and how to get through to Harry and make him feel, you know, like they sort of spoke up and spoke out and acted brave in leaving graffiti for him, right? But yeah, the whole thing is interesting, and she uses a great word that I think we should all use more in our lives. And I'm trying to remember it specifically, but it goes back to what you were talking about when he was trying to sort of reassure Hermione. It was such a unique way to describe
Harry
like
did
reassuring.
not feel as sanguine. Yeah, it's a weird word. So,
but that's one of those moments where I feel like she uses that word, and I feel like that's a moment where I'm reminded I'm an American and I'm not a Brit, because I would never think to use that word when it comes in the context that she uses it. But I think it's still a good way to describe exactly what's happening in that situation. And a good way to make me feel super, super dumb. Let's be honest.
You mentioned the fact about, you know, Harry liking this graffiti, and I think back to the last chapter where Harry is faced with his parents' tombstone and not understanding this idea of life after death. And I think this is a moment where Harry feels less alone, because all of these people have written him all of these messages, you know, and they say things like, good luck wherever you are. If you read this, Harry Potter, we're behind you. Long live Harry Potter. And it's a message of freedom and hope. You know, all of these messages for him, you know, from people who know he'll probably never read them, but they write them anyway, just in case there's a moment that he gets to read them. And I think it means the world to him, because at this moment, the wizarding world is being told that he's a big fat liar, and he's the worst, and he's undesirable number one, and he's a basket of deplorables, all those things, right? And yet, what does he read here? No, actual people are behind him. Actual people believe in him. And I think this is a moment where he kind of needed to see that. He kind of needed to be able to hear that from somebody, because he's already lost his best friend last chapter, who walked out and told him he was a stupid git and left, you know, for not knowing anything. So, like, this is a moment, I think, like, you can really feel that all of a sudden it's almost like somebody turns the pilot light back on in Harry's heart, and he can feel it in that moment.
Well, and I think it's, too, a reminder of why he's doing all this, right? Like, he's going through this because he represents so much more than himself, right? They're giving him these messages, but especially the last one where we talk about long live Harry Potter, he's an ideal in that state and not so much an individual, right? He's a symbol and not a person. And so it's not just long live Harry Potter, but long live this idea of Harry Potter, right? And that's kind of the whole reason that this house is still standing in the first place, as a reminder of the horrible things that happen, right? And so I think it's interesting when you think about that. I think, you know, that to him is energizing, and it kind of gives him a kick in the pants to remember he's on the right track and he should stay brave and keep doing what he's doing. And I think for Hermione, it's just graffiti on a plaque.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think Hermione kind of sees it as being disrespectful to the memory of his parents and everything, and Harry sees it completely differently. And I think, you know, that kind of shows the differences in their personality, you know, as well. So
yeah, I mean, I also feel a little bit like Hermione's, I mean, I don't want to say she's not one to take risks, but I think that she doesn't have quite the same approach or thought process on sort of the outright ballsiness. That's not the word I'm looking for. she's not one to stand up in front of a crowd and declare a very unpopular opinion, right? She's not going to be a dissenter. She's not going to be the voice of a revolution that changes the world, right? So you almost could take it too that she doesn't think those people should have put that there because it's dangerous to them. And they shouldn't be voicing that. And they should be protecting themselves and not painting targets on their back, right? You could think about it from that perspective too. Like, oh, they shouldn't have risked that. It's not worth it. And for Harry, it's like, no, I want to get that message out there. More people need to do that. It's just a difference of opinion, right? And I think Hermione is going to rely more on the following the rules and doing the right thing is going to institute change. And I think Harry has learned that that's not at all how change happens. You have to stand up. You have to stand up against intolerance and cruelty and say the things that are unpopular and get mixed up in the chaos, right? That's how change is going to happen. So I think that there's so many ways you could take this, just depending on how you want to read into it. And there's not a right or a wrong way to read it. But a little bit of me did read that was almost like Hermione was like, oh, they both shouldn't have defiled this plaque, but also they need to be careful. And they shouldn't have put themselves out there that way.
Yeah, I didn't read it like that. And partially, I'm not sure I would agree with you because I feel like, Hermione's the one who helped the boys figure out the ways to rebel in book 5 against Umbridge at school. So, yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. I'd be interested to hear.
Quiet, right? They were all.
They're doing it,
and they weren't.
Right.
They weren't standing up and declaring something, right? Like she organized things in a way that was different than making a statement the way that this graffiti is. So. Yeah. I don't think that there's a right or a wrong way to read this, but there was a part of me that kind of also thought Hermione was having sort of her nurturing motherly approach of like, oh, they shouldn't have done that. Like they shouldn't have put themselves out there. They should have protected themselves. So
yeah. Well, and it's interesting too because as they're looking, they see somebody watching them, and what's weird is that they're under the cloak, and they get the feeling like that they can see them. And so they approach them and they ask if it's Bathilda. And the character nods at them and beckons them to come with them. And so they go to her house. And it's, man, not only does she smell bad, but her house smells bad as they get in there. She is having trouble lighting a candle. Harry is becoming very aware of the locket on his neck and the fact that it is very cold against him, and it seems to be kind of like ticking or beating even faster. And this is one of those moments too where as they're looking around the house, Harry sees all of these picture frames. Some of them are missing pictures, and he sees the picture of the golden-haired thief from Grigorovich's window in one of the frames. And he's like, this is it. And then he realizes where he had seen it from, and that was in The Life and Lives of Albus Dumbledore. And he realizes that's probably where all the missing pictures are. They're in that book now. And so he's pretty excited because he's found this picture, and he's like, this is the person. And he's trying to ask Bathilda who it is, and she's not really answering him in any way whatsoever until she beckons him to come upstairs with her and not Hermione.
Right. And every time Bathilda says something, Hermione sort of like jumps and gets really like she's super on edge. She's more on edge than maybe you would expect her to be, which is really interesting. But yeah, it's kind of weird and creepy and everything. I think the depiction of this scene in the movie is super accurate. Like, they're missing some key pieces, but in terms of like the aesthetic, the home and the smell and all of that, I 1,000% feel like that was how I'm seeing it in my head. And also, this chapter is my worst nightmare. We're going to get to it. I would literally die.
Well, and I mean, who wouldn't?
It's bad.
it's really interesting because, Harry and Hermione have this conversation. Should I go upstairs? And he's like, maybe, Dumbledore told her to only give it to me, the sword, because they're still thinking the sword is here. So they go upstairs and she says to him, are you Potter? And he says, yes, I am. And that's when all heck breaks loose here. And before he knows it, there is a snake in front of him where Bathilda used to be, where her neck used to be, and it's Nagini who pops out of her body, and it starts this massive fight between Harry and Nagini, and Hermione come up the stairs trying to help, and at this moment too, Harry starts to feel the prick of his scar, and he realizes this is about to get worse because Voldemort is coming.
Well, he also hears the conversation between Nagini and Voldemort, right? Like he somehow can tap into this message that's sent, and he knows that something's wrong kind of before he knows something's wrong. And it only gets worse as Voldemort gets closer and closer to this home, right? And then that's when his scar starts prickling and things like that. But he hears him. They point out a couple times how he feels the glee and the joy that Voldemort's experiencing, thinking that Harry's been caught. Which, spoiler, he's not caught. Because we learned that in like a page, so I'm not ruining anything.
And what's fascinating is that and Harry doesn't even realize as he escapes, because as everything kind of blows up, basically, we get this moment where Voldemort himself is screaming, and he is brought back to the memory of the night that he dies, quote unquote. And we get to see everything that happens, that as he walks up to their house, as he talks to some trick-or-treaters, and disregards them and thinks about whether or not he should kill the child and his father, and oh no, too many complications, and how lackadaisical he is, or lackadaisical, you see James and Lily in the sense that they have no idea this is coming. So James he puts his wand down on the couch beside him. And so as Voldemort comes in the door, he doesn't have his wand. He doesn't have anything to fight back with. That's one of the reasons, like, it's not that James and Lily were bad wizards and couldn't even face Voldemort whatsoever. It's just they didn't even have their wands with them because they didn't think that they were in danger. So
because they were in their own home and had no idea he was coming, right? They thought their secret was safe, as we learned in book 3. They thought they were safe. They thought only one person could ever tell anybody, and that person would never tell. And it's an interesting sort of death scene, because we're used to watching movies and reading books where the death scenes are like very dramatic and very drawn out, and this is almost very transactional, even and really until you get to the point where Lily is sort of pleading for Harry's life, right? And even then, Voldemort's kind of he refers to her as a silly girl, move out of the way, that sort of thing. But, all of that, he's very calm and just, he does what he went there to do. And, their guard is down. It's just a very interesting death scene, but it's very traumatic. And Harry gets to experience it through Voldemort as well.
Well, and it's interesting because as he curses Harry, she describes it, his feelings of that he broke. He was nothing. He's in pain. He's in terror. He's got to hide himself. The child, Harry is trapped and screaming and but far away. And then you get this moment where he says no, and it's Harry, because of the way it's written. All the memories are in italics, and then the snake kind of rustling on the floor, and he finds the broken picture, which has the picture of the thief, and so the thief that he's seeking, and then Harry wakes up, and so you get this whole connection here of Harry and Voldemort and Nagini all kind of being a part
each
of them.
other. They
like
almost
each
are
other?
experiencing
Yeah.
each other,
Mhm.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
they're sort of having the shared experience, like that Netflix show
Mhm.
Sense8, if you ever watched that.
Yeah.
Like they're all living these things together, and it's very confusing for all of them. Like they don't know what's happening. Harry doesn't know what's happening. Voldemort even seems confused as to what's happening, right? And we'll talk more about that at the end of the book.
Yeah. Well, and it's really interesting too, because as Harry wakes up, Hermione kind of explains what's been happening about how, he's been in and out. It's almost morning at this point, so Harry's been out for a while, and that she couldn't get the Horcrux off him. She had to do a severing charm, and it's even left an impression on his chest near his heart. It was so clutched to his chest. And then he kind of explains the fact that, she was always the snake. Bathilda was always the snake. And the reason she didn't want you there is because she knew you would know it wasn't her when she spoke in Parzel tongue to me.
Which is why every time she said something, Hermione kind of jumped because it was coming out as like noise and not words, which is also why she really only said like one word when she had to.
Mm-hmm.
Right? She said come, I think, around Hermione. And they made a point of pointing out that she sort of like jumps a little bit. So, yeah.
Well, and this is a moment, too, that's really interesting because, Harry is very distraught because he's like, man, Lupin said that there would be magic we never imagined. And this is crazy. And he's like, look, you need to rest. And she's like, no, you need to rest. And he's like, no, I've been out for a while. Where's my wand? And this is where Harry unfortunately learns that Hermione has broken his wand on accident by the curse that by the spell that she threw at Voldemort that rebounded and broke Harry's wand. And they try to fix Harry's wand and it just won't work. And Harry's devastated, but I don't think it's so interesting here because you can tell he is completely just broken by his wand being broken. And yet he doesn't really want to show that to Hermione. He's like, well, give me your wand, I'll keep the watch. And that's how the chapter ends.
Well, I mean, we've learned throughout the books, throughout this series, that a wizard's wand is sort of an extension of who they are, right? And when we think about the first part of this book and Harry, we talked quite a bit about Harry's sort of fixation on the fact that his wand and Voldemort's wands are connected and that it acted on its own behalf. Like this is to him is a more traumatic loss than just I broke my favorite pen or my cell phone broke and I need to replace it, or, I broke the screen on my cell phone when I got out of my car and it fell out of my pocket or whatever, right? Like this, he sort of felt like was almost an ally of his and it's now gone. So he's lost Ron, he's lost his wand. He didn't really learn anything at Godric's Hollow that he's aware of yet, so it's so fascinating. I mean, we've learned some stuff. We didn't learn nothing, but he didn't get from that experience kind of what he expected to get from the experience, right? Who expects to get attacked by a giant snake inside a person's body? So I think it's just like it's a super disappointing couple chapters for Harry. Like he needs a win at this point. He needs a small win and he's not really getting it. So it's rough. It's real rough right now.
Yeah. We kind of mentioned this, at the beginning of this book, how, things are going to continually get worse. And it reminds me of that quote from The Dark Knight Rises that, things are darkest just before the dawn. And that's really how this book is. Things continually get darker and darker, really, and until, there's a break. And it's... What's interesting that I see in this book too is that in many of the ways where in book 5 Harry was kind of broken down to his bare bones, and kind of built back up then, Harry's being broken down again a little bit, where you've taken away Hedwig, you've taken away all of his friends. He only has one friend left right now, and he's kind of alone, and he's being he's questioning everything, even Dumbledore. And so, and in fact, that'll be something we really get into in the next chapter. But before we get there, Drea, and I totally ruin everything, where can everybody find you?
Sure, you can find me on Twitter at PCFchick or on Instagram at Andrea Coffman, and it's Coffman.
And you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and Vero under the name MattRushing02, and you can follow the 602 Club on Twitter as well, and that's also the podcast I do over on the Trek FM network about all of things geeky. You can also find me over there doing Literary Treks as well as The Orb with Chris Jones. Literary Treks is about the books and the comics of Star Trek, and then The Orb is about Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And last but not least, here on the network, doing Star Wars podcasts with John Mills called Aggressive Negotiation. It's been a blast as we've been going through The Mandalorian Season 1 with our commentaries for that as we look forward to Season 2. But thank you so much for checking your outpost.
Mischief managed.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.